Tonight on 24, Trump says there's no deal for the Islamic Republic, only unconditional surrender. The US president says the Islamic Republic is no longer powerful, and Iran's future leader must have appropriate relations with the US and Israel. Bombing of Ali Khamenei's underground hideout in Tehran with 50 fighter jets. Some sources are reporting the death of Ali Asghar Hejazi, deputy head of Khamenei's office. And the German chancellor's emphasis on the Iranian people's right to self-determination. Merz says Berlin hopes an efficient and independent government will come to power.
From the Iran International Studio, this is 24 with Fardad Farahzad.
This is breaking news. Greetings and good evening to Iran International viewers. In Iran and around the world, we have breaking news. Moments ago, White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said operations against the Islamic Republic will conclude within the next 4 to 6 weeks. Ms. Leavitt also said the U.S. has made good progress in controlling Iran's airspace. She said that currently, several individuals have declared their readiness for leadership in Iran. The U.S. president also said an hour ago that there is no deal with the Islamic Republic except for unconditional surrender. Donald Trump said the Islamic Republic is no longer as powerful as it was a week ago and has been severely neutralized. According to Trump, choosing a new leader for Iran is not difficult, and he emphasized that the future leadership must have appropriate relations with the US and Israel, even if the country is not necessarily democratic. Sources in Israel report that Ali Asghar Hejazi, deputy head of Ali Khamenei's office, was likely killed in an Israeli attack. Earlier, an Israeli army spokesperson reported a heavy attack on Ali Khamenei's underground hideout, which was used by senior officials of the Islamic Republic. The Israeli army says initial assessments show that senior officials of the Islamic Republic were present in this shelter. My colleagues Reza Pahlavi from Jerusalem and Samira Garai from our studio in Washington have joined us. Samira, I'll start with you. Mr. Trump's remarks are very important. He says that several leaders are ready to take positions in Iran, and he doesn't even care if the leadership is religious, provided they have good relations with Israel and the US.
Mr. Trump made these remarks in an interview with Miss Dana Bash from CNN television. He had a phone conversation with her where he said these things regarding future leadership, regarding the current situation inside Iran, military operations. Before that, Mr. Trump published a few lines on Truth Social. There too, he spoke about leader or leaders. He wrote the word leader and added S in parentheses to pluralize the word leader, meaning that we're not necessarily talking about one person or necessarily about several people. Mr. Trump prefers to keep everyone in this state of confusion these days. We don't exactly know what's going on in their minds, whether they're thinking of one person or several. Ms. Leavitt, I think, is still speaking with reporters right now in front of the White House. He says, we're currently monitoring several people. We have them in mind, we're working on them, we're thinking about them. But let me get back to CNN and the interview they did. There, he says that choosing a leader inside Iran will be easy, something like Venezuela. It's not a complicated task. And well, we know what the situation in Venezuela is like. The head of the government was removed, the second in command is still working with the United States, and according to Mr. Trump, has a good relationship. Mr. Trump has talked about Venezuela several times here and there, but we know that the operations the United States is carrying out on Iranian soil haven't just been limited to a 2-hour operation and removing the head of government. And these operations have continued. They've removed various leaders and different people at different levels. Once, in the White House, I think when he was sitting with Mr. Merz, he said that the leader was removed. Then, the second layer, we were thinking about a leader among them, and they were removed too. Their third layer was also removed. Little by little, we're getting to a point where we don't even know anyone there anymore. All these talks have happened. The important point that CNN is now headlining and really pushing is this discussion about the future government being religious and not democratic. Ms. Ash asked him if it's a religious leader, will we cooperate with them? He says yes. I'm working with a lot of religious people around the world world who are heads of government, the issue isn't a religious one, and the US's understanding of religious is very different from what we in Iran, for example, consider clerics as representatives of religion. Elsewhere, regarding the government being democratic, he says the point is that they should put someone in charge, someone should become a leader who has a good relationship with the United States and Israel. They should have a good relationship with the countries in the region, have a fair relationship with their own people, and they're looking for these things. These are discussions that have been brought up today, and that leader or leaders were also mentioned on Truth Social. He says an excellent leader or leaders should be chosen, and Iran should return to its former greatness. We'll come back again and rebuild Iran with the rest of the countries. It's not in a good situation now. He also mentioned these on Truth Social, and Miss Levitt, who I mentioned is speaking. Now, she also had a noteworthy point. This is the discussion about the war's timeline, how long it'll last, how they projected it, what they predicted for the operation they started. Initially, we had heard from Mr. Trump about 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks. Miss Levitt is describing this as a 1 month to 1.5 month period. 4 to 6 weeks is the current timeline. We will officially complete the first week in just a few more hours since the joint U.S.-Israel operation began. Ms. Lloyd explicitly says the engagement will continue for another 4 to 6 weeks. Surprisingly, the mounting financial costs the United States is currently incurring do not seem to matter much to them. Furthermore, there is the ongoing gas price discussion. Mr. Trump confidently said that this increase in gas here at home is strictly temporary. He insists it does not matter, predicting prices might even go lower than before the war. These represent the latest talks Mr. Trump gave recently.
And Reza, over there in Israel, senior officials are now giving us more specific details about the attack on Ali Khamenei's headquarters. That's right, exactly. This morning we had a lot of graphic images from Iran International's audience on social media platforms that we were closely looking at. We were seeing, Fardad. We are seeing a whole lot of striking images of really massive, ground-shaking explosions in that targeted area. After that, we saw the Israeli army release an official statement saying that with 50 fighter jets, they have strategically dropped over 100 heavy bunker buster bombs on that area, which is, in fact, the underground hideout of the killed leader of the Islamic Republic, Ali Khamenei. The maps that the Israeli army provided, well, specifically that detailed visualized graphic that they officially released and presented, clearly indicate that this facility is situated dozens of meters deep underground. It is an incredibly complex place, Fardad, one that featured many different reinforced doors, multiple hidden entrances, and a variety of specialized operational rooms. It was actually designed specifically as a fortified bunker for security forces and senior officials of the Islamic Republic to safely gather in absolute emergencies, like on a day such as this, in times of severe crisis. The primary purpose was to effectively take command of the war from that subterranean location. Currently, as the situation is actively being assessed and estimated, and as the army has officially stated, they are thoroughly reviewing the details. It's that some senior government officials, and of course military officials, of the Islamic Republic were also present there during the bombing, which happened early this morning, at dawn today. We also had the 15th wave of attacks, Fardad, in Tehran, which took place this afternoon. Immediately after announcing the start of this wave of attacks, the Israeli army said that it had hit a target based on army intelligence and had, in fact, precisely targeted and hit the intended location. Shortly after that strike, the dedicated army correspondent reporting in the military section of the Times of Israel newspaper announced that the target of these calculated attacks was Ali Asghar Hejazi. He served as the deputy head of the office of Ali Khamenei, the former leader of the Islamic Republic, and it is widely reported that he was killed in the immediate aftermath of the bombings. He was a deeply secretive figure who, if ordinary citizens passed him on the street, would remain unrecognized. Behind the scenes, however, he was an exceptionally influential strategist who had been present in Ali Khamenei's office for many years. If I'm not mistaken, since 1989, he had officially become the security deputy of Ali Khamenei's office, and this is the major development that happened today. Meanwhile, the Israeli army, just in the past hour, Fardad, has also released 3 different highly detailed reports. One of them is specifically about the extensive operations it has carried out over the past 7 days. It explicitly said that 6,500 bombs have landed in Iran's sky, meaning they were deployed on on various strategic targets across Iran. In total, 2,500 combat sorties have been flown. These were continuous round-trip flights originating from Israel directly to Iran, and also safely returning to it. And the briefing also said that the targets, recent military operations directed against the government in Tehran, have strategically targeted major weapons production facilities across Iran. Also, in the regions of western Iran, we had emerging reports of various significant and widespread attacks. The Israeli army also officially said that it has targeted 400 distinct military targets, including key ballistic missile launch platforms and expansive drone storage facilities. Furthermore, Channel 12 of Israeli television announced just a few minutes ago that more than, or close to 75%, in fact, of the Islamic Republic's overall missile capability has been completely destroyed. And finally, let me also say that in its latest official report, the Israeli army stated that it targeted the headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, specifically the IRTC Air Force headquarters, located in the Daye suburb of Beirut an hour ago.
Thank you both, Reza Pahlavi in Jerusalem and Samira Garai in Washington. Meanwhile, Republican Senator Ted Cruz, in an interview with Nagar Mojdadi, a reporter for Iran International, stated that the goal of the U.S. and Israeli military campaign is to remove the Islamic Republic from power and reduce Tehran's ability to assassinate or harm its neighbors. Ted Cruz said this regime must be removed from power.
Removing a government that seeks to kill Americans is entirely in the interest of the United States. And I must emphasize that this matter is equally in the interest of the Iranian people as well. A population of about 92 million people who have lived under the shadow of tyranny and repression for 47 years. In my belief, freedom is now on the verge, and we can see it before us.
Omid Meymarian, a political analyst at the Dawn Institute from Detroit, and Farzin Nadimi, a Washington Institute senior research fellow for defense and security affairs, also from Detroit, are with us. Thank you both. Mr. Meymarian, it seems the question of whether the United States is pursuing regime change or not has been removed from the questions. Apparently, that's how it is. The United States is seriously pursuing regime change, or a very significant fundamental change within Iran's current government. But as for what the next phase will be, there are now many questions, especially with this recent interview by Dembish with Mr. Trump.
Absolutely, that's right. Over the past few days, we've essentially seen that the conceptual framework of this war has also changed. I mean, at the beginning of the war, the discussion was that the Islamic Republic has a nuclear program, a missile program, proxy groups, and these are problematic. And until, for example, we are completely reassured that it absolutely cannot acquire nuclear weapons, we won't end this war. So in the days after that, Mr. Trump basically moved towards his conceptual framework, meaning he essentially said this war is a clash of civilizations, and he took the war's framework back to the beginning of the revolution, the hostage crisis, and the death to America chants over the past 47 years, essentially opening up new dimensions for this war. Conceptually, and in terms of the justification for why the war is happening, they're basically talking about how, we didn't start this war at all. Right now, the argument many Republicans are making on American TV networks, or Mr. Trump himself is bringing up, is that we didn't start this war. The Islamic Republic started this war 47 years ago, and we're just finishing it. So, with the political framework that Mr. Trump, White House members, and leading Republicans are presenting, the issue of regime change seems to be the main agenda for the United States. We have moved very far away from past norms. I mean, it is a very serious shift from decades of traditional deterrence policy, and just wanting to carefully limit or contain Iran's influence. That long-standing approach has been completely set aside. As you mentioned, now it is firmly about regime change, prompting numerous discussions about what the ultimate future will be, whether democratic or not, and who to negotiate with.
I still think that, mainly because we're currently in the first part of this program. We lost you, Mr. Meymarian. Please continue.
Yes. My last point was that we hear a lot from Mr. Trump about what Iran's future will be, who Iran's future leader is, and how it will be governed. We're still in the first stage, and you can't take these talks too seriously.
Mr. In Detroit, you also seem to have a security alert. Mr. Nadimi, how do things look from the war front? Right now, we're seeing that the Islamic Republic has used so-called cluster bombs in Israel, which is against international laws, although neither the Islamic Republic nor Israel are signatories to that agreement. On the domestic front in Iran, it also seems that attacks are severely escalating beyond the first days of the war.
Yes, the air operations are continuing with full intensity and at an increasing pace. The U.S. Air Force and the Israeli Air Force are doing this with truly exemplary coordination, as the gentlemen in Iran themselves say, and they have very high coordination, and sometimes it's a division of responsibility. Sometimes it's a geographical division, and whenever needed, they provide support to each other. Here, in my opinion, a very decisive factor is the U.S. Air Force's refueling capability, which provides the opportunity for these fighter jets to continue flying for a long time over Iranian skies and over the critical target area, flying with their maximum bomb capacity and inflicting the most devastating damage on each sortie. This, in my professional opinion, was a very key operational point compared to the dynamics of the previous 12-day war. Furthermore, the command and control capabilities, as well as the gathered intelligence of both allied countries, have been seamlessly combined, and we see that this joint network is operating very effectively. Specific buildings, and by that I mean highly fortified buildings of security centers, military centers, and industrial complexes directly related to military industries are being systematically destroyed with very high precision. Of course, well, many of these buildings are empty. They're empty. And those individuals and those personnel and those suppression forces have been moved to other places, to schools, to hospitals, to universities, and sports halls. And any intelligence obtained about their new locations will cause attacks to be directed at those places, just like this sports hall that was attacked yesterday. And this is very concerning. Concern that civilians might get hurt in the middle of all this issue. But militarily, we see that in the south, an operation began with the Army's Navy, and efforts were made to target the Army's naval vessels, especially those ships those ships capable of leaving port and firing anti-ship missiles with a medium range, now between 120 to 300 kilometers. These ships can fire missiles. A significant number of these naval vessels have been either destroyed or severely disabled in recent operations. Gradually, the overall number of these specialized vessels had increased, but their fleets are now taking losses. We saw yesterday that the highly modified vessel Shahid Bagheri, a platform from which drones or remote-controlled aircraft used to fly, has ultimately sunk. Furthermore, at least one of the IRGC's advanced missile frigates, which could easily be considered the most powerful large vessels in terms of sheer firepower among the IRGC and the regular army, has also sunk. And it seems that attention is gradually shifting towards the main infrastructure of the IRGC Navy, which are those fast boats, the fast boat bases, and those tunnels where they keep and hide these fast boats and then move them to the coast when needed. A few examples of those have been bombed, and we can expect that in the coming days, more pressure will be put on these coastal artillery batteries and those tunnels and tunnel complexes that house shore-to-sea missiles, as well as cruise missiles swept. At the same time, this intense concentration of bombings can be seen almost everywhere. In the western and northwestern provinces, the strikes are highly deliberate. Every single security center associated with the police stations, special forces, and specialized units that played a direct role in the brutal January suppression is being attacked in a strictly targeted manner. This precise strategy is vital because it determines the profound psychological impact these actions can have on the public. By dismantling the forces of oppression, it influences when emboldened citizens can finally return to the streets. Naturally, these security hubs are being attacked right alongside key military targets. It really seems like, as they say, they are moving remarkably ahead of schedule. But on the other hand, Iran's ballistic missiles are still being actively fired south towards Israel. while launched in much smaller numbers recently. Those missiles that do manage to reach their targets seem to have a highly significant impact. Missiles that act as cluster munitions, like the Ghadar series or the Khorramshahr 4 series, are notable examples, even though they create a very interesting, dramatic image in the night sky. In my opinion, they do not possess much practical effectiveness. This is especially true concerning dense urban targets. Most of these are missiles that can be highly effective for striking sprawling military air bases, but they're not very effective in populated urban areas.
Mr. Memayarian, Mr. Nadimi also pointed out that it's clear that even now, as we speak, although limited, the Islamic Republic still has firepower. It's causing destruction in some countries in the region. Ms. Lloyd said a little earlier that this war might last up to a month and a half, 6 weeks. Do you think that given the decrease we've seen in the Islamic Republic's attacks and the amount of bombing currently happening in Tehran and other cities, Ms. Lloyd or the U.S. government are, in a way, exaggerating the severity to make the nation accept a lesser outcome, and the Islamic Republic might fall much sooner than this 1 to 1.5 month period?
Yes, anyway, Washington's analysis is that in the coming days, things will happen. Attacks will be carried out, making it impossible to maintain the suppression forces, to maintain that government bureaucracy, and the regime will collapse. It will fall apart, and the upper echelons of the government. If the top leadership, whether military or administrative, won't be able to communicate effectively with the middle and lower sections, this itself will rapidly lead to the complete breakdown of various operational parts of the government's bureaucracy. At the same time, there's also this underlying concern that a part of the Islamic Republic's measured reaction regarding recent missile launches, and anyway, the intentional reduction in overall missile launches, might be part of a calculated military strategy. I think this is largely to prolong this war, ensuring that in the coming days or next week, they can have necessary firepower. Right now, the main issue is that the Islamic Republic is basically working out the math, figuring out exactly how much America can destroy compared to how many missiles they currently possess. Politically, however, what is happening is very important. The United States has successfully created a large consensus at the regional level. Furthermore, the Islamic Republic's own recent actions have solidified this broader political consensus. As a result, European nations have now joined this strategic move by America and Israel. Mr. Trump, actually, with a lot of talks he's had with American media over the past few days, Mr. Trump spoke very little about this attack in the first 3 days, but over the past 48 hours, he's spoken with a lot of media outlets. And regarding various aspects of this attack, from a political perspective, from the future of Iran's perspective, from the perspective of what options they have in mind, from the perspective of what they expect from the current officials of the Islamic Republic, like diplomats leaving their workplaces or military personnel laying down their weapons, he has been actively present in terms of opening a path in terms of America, so we can see what America wants to do. For this, overall, in my opinion, their greatest hope is that, well, the officials of the Islamic Republic will ultimately surrender, and their very first option is for them to peacefully surrender and allow, well, structural changes and new developments to proceed in a stable way that definitely doesn't cause widespread chaos, regional insecurity, and, well, complete anarchy inside Iran. But this is a hopeful scenario that, well, we honestly haven't seen any realistic sign of from the officials of the Islamic Republic over the past few days. And still, if we look closely at, for example, domestic news agencies, official state TV broadcasts, and all that, we see that the narrative they present of the war differs completely from what we observe outside Iran.
Mr. Nadim, it seems that if we look at it realistically, eventually, at some point, whether it's 1 day, 1 week, 10 days, 2 weeks, or 1 month from now, the missile and drone capabilities of the Islamic Republic will either be completely stopped, or will be so negligible that it won't inflict any significant damage on neighboring countries, or won't be able to. But the next stage, it seems, given the resistance the Islamic Republic is showing, will be urban resistance. How complicated you think that stage will be? Is there even a roadmap visible on the horizon?
Yes, of course, I genuinely do not think there is much of a clear strategic roadmap in place, but the situation could become highly complicated if hardcore elements of the regime decide to actively engage in fierce-round resistance. Anyway, exactly as you said, their stockpile of missiles will inevitably run out at some point. Ultimately, what remains as their primary strategy, they hope, is that on the ground they can directly confront the so-called invading forces. To do this, they plan to use the exact same asymmetric guerrilla warfare and partisan tactics that the IRGC's Quds Force helped the Shiite militias with for many years in Iraq, utilizing hidden roadside bombs, improvised explosive devices, and now highly maneuverable drones to disrupt enemy advancements. One could reasonably argue that it is fully expected that in these newly evolving urban wars, advanced drones will inevitably take the place of traditional roadside bombs. In that specific scenario, it could become highly problematic and severely destabilizing if the fragile issue of political transition gets entirely caught up in a chaotic urban conflict. Furthermore, if hardline individuals entrenched within the regime from now on, specifically those very fanatical elements operating within the Revolutionary Guard or the Basij, decide to sacrifice their personal interests, their ideological interests, for what they perceive as the national interests of the country, and continue to fiercely resist, in that case, it could drastically complicate the situation.
Thank you to both of you, Omid Memorian, political analyst at the Dawn Institute from Detroit, and Farzin Nadimi, senior research fellow for defense and security affairs at the Washington Institute. The Israeli army says over 60% of the Islamic Republic's missile launchers have been neutralized. Based on these assessments, the number of remaining launchers is estimated to be between 100 and 200. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, also said that the country's army continues its attacks on the leadership centers of the Islamic Republic, as well as on various Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. Meanwhile, images released in Tehran show that the main attacks from dawn until Friday evening were concentrated on the central and eastern areas of the capital. In these attacks, governmental and state institutions, including areas around Pastor neighborhood and the Assembly of Experts building in central Tehran and Imam Ali Officers University in the east, were once again targeted.
Now it hit 2 more. Zoom in, zoom in. Wait, the wave is coming now. The wave is coming now. Oh, look out. It just hit another one right there. Zoom in, because any more zoom than this is practically useless, you know? The wave is coming now. Shit, what is this?
It's 5 a.m., 5:30, Friday, Isfand 15. Likely the leader's office or residence. They fired over 20 missiles. Over 20, I think.
Ruhollah Rahimpour, a journalist and political analyst, has joined us. First of all, Mr. Rahimpour, I'm glad you're finally settled after all that wandering around the world. I want to ask you this. What strategy do you think the Islamic Republic is pursuing right now? Because from any outside observer's perspective, it seems like there's no way out. The volume of Israeli and American bombing is very high. The Islamic Republic's missile and drone capabilities are clearly diminishing. It seems there's no way out. Why are they still resisting?
Greetings to you, Mr. Fardad, and also to our esteemed viewers joining us. I am very grateful for your kindness and that of all the other dear friends tuning in today. Look, when we observe this, what is definable in the core logic of survival for the Islamic Republic is an absolute commitment to resistance until the very last moment. That is actually the main strategy of the logic of survival that is so clearly showing itself in the current situation. I mean, they are consistently trying every possible way to show the international community that they are fully willing to resist and that they are not willing to surrender. They are trying to show that they maintain the military ability to inflict severe damage. Even if deemed necessary, they will willingly inflict severe damage that fundamentally jeopardize their own future in terms of foreign policy. I mean, suppose even if the Islamic Republic ultimately survives, it will later have to engage in complex diplomatic discussions with about 10 regional countries over the extensive damage it has inflicted on them. What remains paramount for their leadership is to project an image that they are fiercely resisting, and if they are going to be destroyed, they will be destroyed while actively resisting. Essentially, the Islamic Republic firmly considers considers surrender a fate far more devastating than actual destruction itself. Thus, it relentlessly makes every effort to demonstrate this unyielding defiance in various ways. On one hand, it tries to show off its offensive military capabilities, even if it faces serious paralysis, like the current situation with its missiles and drones. In the media sphere, it tries, just as in the country's domestic media, to project an illusion of absolute strength and unified national control. They portray themselves as victorious in the field. Their narrative of the war is one where America and Israel have been defeated, and they are the absolute victors. They refer to Ali Khamenei as the martyr imam. This is its media aspect. In the political aspect too, for example, by forming a provisional leadership council, or announcing that they are still holding assembly of experts meetings to determine the third leader. They are trying to show that they want to pursue a normal situation. All of these are signs of a strategy. That core strategy is fundamentally based on resisting until the very last moment and refusing to give up this resistance, even if it directly leads to creating a devastating scorched earth, both domestically and even spreading into neighboring regional countries. This extreme outcome is exactly what they are relentlessly striving after. From the fervent heart of this unyielding resistance, they ultimately imagine that perhaps, with just a small chance of success, the Americans and Israelis will grow weary and cease their attacks. Alternatively, they accept that, in any case, they will inevitably be killed and destroyed under heavy attack and in the brutal theater of war. They consider this ultimate sacrifice a profound honor, something they proudly refer to as Husseini Jihad. As a direct result of this fatalistic mindset, they also deeply know there's absolutely no escape from this impending reality. The issue is that they're trying to postpone this destruction, devastation, and overthrow, hoping that perhaps a breakthrough will happen from one pillar to another.
Do you see any capable technocrat currently operating within the system right now who could step in to save the government at the last minute? Could they successfully negotiate with Trump or make a meaningful change to the Constitution? Or do you think the Islamic Republic will simply fight to its very last wrath, ultimately collapsing through unavoidable violence and conflict?
It's easy to say on paper, Fardad, meaning there are people who, on paper, one might imagine have this possibility, or due to the influences that media currents around them, like reformists, like moderates, have created, it might be imagined that they have this possibility. But the issue isn't about the individual. Fundamentally, the structure of the Islamic Republic isn't built that way. I mean, even if someone, hypothetically, on paper, had the realistic possibility to make a fundamental change, retreat from core positions and principles, suspend deeply held ideals, and put the vital issue of anti-arrogance into complete abeyance, even if this happened on paper, it might be possible. The structure of the Islamic Republic is such that such an event is impossible. The governance structure in the Islamic Republic, neither in terms of hardware nor software, is not based on the principle that anti-arrogance, anti-Israel sentiment, and fundamentally what they consider themselves to be, like an apocalyptic force, should be forgotten, and someone could change that. Anti-arrogance, anti-Israel sentiment, and fundamentally what they consider themselves to be, like an apocalyptic force, should be forgotten, and someone could change that. Even if individuals, whether out of fear or even out of expediency, have the idea that they can make such a change. They've had a very good opportunity to do such a thing over the past 47 years, but they couldn't. I mean, they couldn't do it even under normal circumstances. Under wartime conditions, naturally, this possibility won't exist. My impression is that the signs of what the Islamic Republic is showing right now are that they want to fight as much as possible. I mean, to the death. If they're killed in the war, they'll say they became martyrs. And if they manage to come out of the war alive, they'll proudly claim victory and tell a grand story of triumph.
Well, anyway, coming out of this devastating war alive, that's highly unlikely. And I guess, after all, not everyone in the Islamic Republic is a dedicated martyrdom seeker. Many of them actually seek personal comfort. They have children, spouses, established lives, and substantial financial investments safely outside Iran. Could that more pragmatic, technocratic part of the regime, the part that, after all, maintains a much more tangible connection with worldly reality, possibly have its rational voice heard in these incredibly sensitive moments?
If we are truly realistic, we can accept that they are exerting significant pressure through various strategic means. Prominent figures like, for example, Hassan Rouhani or other allied individuals might continuously exert political pressure, but the undeniable reality is that what they showed recently, for example, in the formation of the Provisional Leadership Council, specifically meaning bringing Arafi into that crucial council, the coordinated ideas that the Friday prayer leaders were proposing just today in influential Friday prayers across the country, and the extensive state media efforts designed to firmly establish Mojtaba Khamenei's leadership. All of this collective maneuvering clearly shows that a fundamental structure of the Islamic Republic possesses a tremendous amount of institutional resistance against them. In other words, the Islamic Republic is entangled in a complex two-front battle. On one hand, it is actively fighting geopolitical adversaries like America and Israel. On the other hand, it is stubbornly resisting widespread demands from within the country, demands that a significant portion of the public deeply shares. Realistically speaking, even in the most optimistic scenario, while these internal forces are exerting pressure, their actual impact remains very low. Furthermore, the looming death of Ali Khamenei only adds severe uncertainty to the current highly volatile situation of the country. It does not indicate that the deeply entrenched power structure, the dominant power coalition that emerges directly from the conservative core of the majority of the clergy, the IRGC, and the Supreme Leader's Office would ever want to show genuine flexibility in the face of these growing public demands. That the populace strongly want something, well, that is certainly one thing. How the rigidly established government structure actually reacts to it, however, is another thing entirely. I do not believe that even if they were to exert a tremendous amount of sustained demand and intense political pressure, the structure would possess the systemic capability to create such unprecedented flexibility. As a result, their overarching demand, however real, urgent, and legitimate it may be on the ground, just cannot ultimately be effective or truly fruitful.
Mr. Rahimpour, do you think our analysts, the international community, had to some extent a mistaken assessment of the Islamic Republic's approach, thinking that if there's really maximum pressure, if it leads to war, they will show flexibility, or at least by taking out the leader of the Islamic Republic, the system would just fall apart? I mean, do you think they underestimated how suicidal the government actually is?
I completely agree with your assessment. I think a segment of analysts, both Iranian experts and, foreign observers, shared a flawed perception. They held this idea that with maximum economic pressure, escalating war signals, and even the targeted killing of a former leader of the Islamic Republic, there was a strong possibility that the regime would immediately collapse. Even at that volatile time, there were pragmatic voices who talked about how the Islamic Republic was actually formed with incredibly complex institutionalized layers in its decision-making and, policy-making structure. It is definitely not like the entire political structure can be suddenly destroyed simply by, for example, removing one key individual. In this way, I, of course, do not think the general American public had such a specific perception. However, among seasoned political analysts, this perception or, this distinct sense of optimism existed, that this strategy could finally finish the job. There were those experts who talked about how a precise chain of events, a continuous, successive, and ongoing situation needed to be deliberately formed. The theory was that not only by removing the top leader of the Islamic Republic, but also by thoroughly disrupting the decision-making system, paralyzing the administrative structure that a government actually operates, and irreparably destroying the connecting chains of those bureaucratic layers, the Islamic Republic could be fully overthrown. This isn't a one-night, two-night, or three-night job. It's something that's time-consuming. It needs a media situation. It needs continuous warfare. And of course, it also needs the support of a large segment of the people from within the country to, have with it. In this way, that perception, it wasn't a correct one. And it should be understood that America's war strategy was not, of course, formed based on that. And in fact, it was formed on the basis of being able to advance different situations phase by phase.
Thank you, Rohollah Rahimpour, political analyst. Okay, we have a short time to go to the Middle East. You're seeing live images from Doha, Qatar. Reports indicate that air defense systems have been urgently activated there to counter potential threats. Qatari authorities issued several safety warnings to citizens just 3 or 4 hours ago, although the number of Islamic Republic attacks has noticeably decreased in recent days. Missiles and drones from the Islamic Republic still occasionally breach the local airspace, keeping military forces on high alert. across Qatari airspace, you know that one of the most important and heavily fortified US military bases in the region is located right there at Al Udeid, just on the outskirts of Doha. And that is exactly why the Islamic Republic has targeted and attacked positions in Qatar several times. In the past few minutes, as regional tensions rise, Iraqi security sources also reported that airstrikes targeted positions of the Popular Mobilization Forces in northern Baghdad. For now, though, as you can visibly see, the sky over Doha is relatively calm at this particular moment. Despite this temporary quiet, strict security warnings are still being issued occasionally, and local authorities are actively asking citizens to retreat to designated shelters. Let's go to the other side of the Middle East, to the Mediterranean, to see live images from Tel Aviv, where Israeli air defense systems are also intercepting missiles and projectiles that have been fired towards the city. In recent days, warning sirens have sounded in parts of Tel Aviv and surrounding areas. Citizens have gone to shelters multiple times. Although their number seems to be decreasing, Israeli officials say air defense systems have been activated to counter aerial threats and have asked residents to remain in shelters or safe places. You've probably seen an image on social media that the Islamic Republic recently attacked Israel with a Khorramshahr 4 missile, which is a missile with cluster munitions, the use of which in war is prohibited by many international agreements. Although Israel itself is not a signatory to this agreement, Israel and the Islamic Republic are among the few countries that still use these types of weapons. The German chancellor says Berlin and its European allies are working hard to preserve Iran's sovereignty and prevent a Syria-like scenario. According to Friedrich Merz, Germany agrees with the US and Israeli objectives regarding Iran's nuclear and missile program and its support for terrorism and proxy forces, but a complete collapse of the Iranian government would lead to widespread chaos. Andreas Minich, Vice Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Austrian Parliament, is with us from Vienna. Mr. Minich, thank you for accepting our invitation. How much do you think there's a unified voice in the European Union right now regarding the approach towards the Islamic Republic, especially considering that some of the Islamic Republic's missiles have now reached European soil, including the British base in Cyprus?
Greetings to you, and a very good evening. I am truly grateful that you gave me this opportunity to speak with you about this pressing topic today. In my opinion, I think what you're currently seeing is absolutely insane, specifically and especially all those military launches and missiles directed against all those countries in the different places that you just mentioned. For example, we look at Cyprus, Greece and Turkey, and we saw the alarming situation in Azerbaijan yesterday. For us, living right here in Europe, there is absolutely no question left that this is a blatant criminal act and must be stopped permanently. Made.
ما یک چند هفته پیش با تحریم ها رو اعمال کردیم علیه سپاه پاسداران، نه فقط در پارلمان اتریش بلکه در پارلمان اروپا، و کاملا دیوانه وار است اتفاقی که داره میفته وقتی که شما شاهد این هستین که یک رژیم اسلامی تمام اعتبار خودش رو از دست داده، مشروعیت خودش رو از دست داده، وقتی که هزاران نفر از مردمان خودش رو کشت. ما در مورد بیش از 40,000 نفر صحبت میکنیم که کشته شدن و خب فکر میکنم که عدد و رقم ها بیشتر از اینها هست. نمیشه کلمه پیدا کرد که این جنایت ها رو توصیف کرد. اونها فقط یک کلمه هست و فقط میتونیم امیدوار باشیم که این رژیم پایانش رقم بخوره هرچه سریعتر.
There is absolutely no doubt that the Islamic Republic regime is a criminal entity that has brutally killed its own citizens. It is now abundantly clear that this leadership sees no prohibition for itself to aggressively target neighboring countries, extending its reach from the Caucasus all the way to the Persian Gulf. However, there are also growing concerns today, especially across Europe, about the emergence of a massive new wave of displaced migrants, given the destabilizing previous experiences in other war-torn Middle Eastern countries. Given this context, how much do you think there have been and currently are similarities and fundamental differences between Iran and other devastating regional conflicts, like those in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria?
مسلماً اینجوری نیست. من باید بگم که این دقیقاً موقعیت متفاوتی هست. اعتقاد من مردم ایران و ایرانی ها میدونن که این هرچه زود به زودی تموم میشه و این رژیم اسلامی ترور تمام میشه با حمایت اسرائیل و ایالات متحده و همینطور با کشورهای اروپایی و این فکر میکنم که هم دلیل هست که مردم ایران خیلی شجاع هستند و اونها در خانه‌های خودشان میمانند و صبر میکنند برای لحظه مناسب و امیدوار هستیم که خیلی زود همه چیز درست خواهد شد.
How much of a role do you think Europe can ultimately play? I know your country, much like Switzerland and a few others, doesn't intervene militarily because it is a strictly neutral country. However, not all Europeans operate like that. Right now, it clearly seems Europeans are growing increasingly frustrated with the Islamic Republic's current approach, particularly influential nations like the French and the Germans. Given this shift, do you see a viable space for Europe to play a more prominent, active role within this complex system?
من فکر میکنم تمام کشورها در اروپا همه نگران و ناراحت هستند از چیزی که جمهوری اسلامی انجام داده، نه فقط برای این چند روز گذشته، بلکه ما باید برگردیم به عقب‌تر، به 47 سال گذشته برای و تاریخ ترور و گروگانگیری و همینطور تامین مالی تروریست ها و همینطور مسئله نیابتی ها و عمل تروریست در سطح جهان. و الان من خیلی خوشحال هستم که می‌بینم که صدراعظم مرز، آقای مرز، بالاخره اشاره میکنه به تمام اون واقعیت های مجرمانه و جنایتکارانه و همه ما که ما هممون تحریم کردیم این رژیم اسلامی رو و بایستی سعی بکنیم و حمایت بکنیم از مردم شجاع ایران برای اینکه این حس همبستگی رو به اونها منتقل بکنیم و که اونها متوجه بشن که تنها نیستن و ما در کنار اونها ایستادیم.
Thank you. Andreas Minich, Vice Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Austrian Parliament, is with us from Vienna. Prince Reza Pahlavi, an hour ago, in a message to Iran's neighboring countries, condemned the violation of these countries' sovereignty by the Islamic Republic and said, standing with the people of Iran is a strategic choice for the countries of the region. Referring to the protests of the Iranian people, he said, Iranians have paid a heavy price to reach this point.
The Islamic Republic has launched missiles at the United Arab Emirates.
جمهوری اسلامی موشک‌هایی به امارات متحده عربی، بحرین، قطر، کویت، عمان، اردن، عراق و عربستان سعودی شلیک کرده. این رژیم همسایگان عرب ما را هدف قرار می‌دهد. نقض حاکمیت ملی آنها غیر قابل قبول است و ما آن را محکوم می‌کنیم. اما این امر تازه‌ای نیست. ماهیت جمهوری اسلامی همیشه همین بوده و به همین دلیل است که باید پایان یابد. نزدیک به 5 دهه است که این رژیم تروریستی در سراسر منطقه ما هرج و مرج و خونریزی به پا کرده است. از اسد حمایت کرد و سوریه را به گورستانی بدل ساخت. حزب الله را ایجاد کرد، دولتی در درون دولت در لبنان. حوثی ها را مسلح کرد تا شبه جزیره عربستان را بی‌ثبات کند. در عراق شبه نظامی ها را تقویت کرد که حاکمیت عراق را تضعیف کند. به مراکز اقتصادی پادشاهی عربستان سعودی و امارات متحده عربی حمله کرد.
None of this has ever been the will of the Iranian nation. Rather, it has been the will of a regime that has occupied our country. However, the geopolitical scene has now fundamentally changed. Assad is permanently gone. Hezbollah is severely weakened. The regime's military nuclear program has been pushed back significantly, and its fragile economy is in absolute freefall.
The pillars of this regime's aggression are
The aggressive political pillars of this regime are collapsing. The people of Iran paid the price for reaching this point with their blood. In just 2 days, the regime massacred tens of thousands of my compatriots, but it could not rake the nation. Instead, it is the regime itself that is collapsing. Today, history reminds us of our future potential. Before the 1979 revolution, Iran cooperated closely with Arab leaders, from King Faisal to President Sadat. In Oman, my father also helped Sultan Qaboos defend his country against rebellion. Back then, during a brighter era of mutual respect, we were true partners. I assure you that we will be true partners again. The resilient people of Iran have explicitly asked me to lead the critical transitional period after this current regime is finally gone. I have resolutely accepted this monumental responsibility. A vital part of the great mission they entrusted to me is to restore our beloved country and our foreign relations to a state of peace and normalcy. I will do exactly that without any hesitation. My solemn commitment is that this transition will be carried out in a secure, orderly manner. The country will achieve lasting stability, and Iranians will freely determine their own future through the power of the ballot box. We will not repeat the devastating mistakes that occurred in some other countries during their fragile transitional periods. We will avoid destructive scenarios like de-Baathification and will retain as many experienced government employees and essential public service workers as possible to ensure stability in the transition process. Iranians have made their clear choice at a very heavy cost. Now, we earnestly ask our friends in the Arab world to join us and prepare to officially recognize and engage with our transitional government. We will rebuild our cherished country, not for aggressive expansionism, but to genuinely serve the resilient people of Iran. We will build our future diplomatic relations, not on destructive export of ideology, but firmly on mutual respect and shared common interests. Furthermore, we will reintegrate into the regional and global economy to systematically increase the economic prosperity of the citizens of all our interconnected countries. Standing in solidarity with the people of Iran is not an act of charity. It is a crucial, strategic investment to transform our broader region into one of the most stable, secure, and prosperous in the entire world. Together, we can build a thriving Middle East that our children will be truly proud to inherit. Join us on this new path.
Mohsen Banai, an Iranian and Islamic history researcher, says the prince's message outlines a vision of friendly relations between Iran and its neighbors after the Islamic Republic's overthrow.
The Arab countries that are around us now and their leaders, they might not have any memory or any direct information about what Iran was like before the Islamic Revolution. And that's why there's a famous Latin saying that goes, I fear the enemy I know less than the friend I don't know.
برای همین یک مسئله معروف لاتینی هستش که میگه من از دشمنی که میشناسمش کمتر میترسم تا دوستی که نمیشناسمش.
And here, actually, Prince Reza Pahlavi, in my opinion, is intelligently filling this crucial diplomatic gap by openly saying, we are your sincere friends, and we want you to know us. We want you to fully recognize what was here in the past, and you simply shouldn't forget. Historically, Iran had the very best constructive relations with all of its regional neighbors. For instance, Iran played a highly special role in the issue of Oman and defeating that Marxist rebellion in Dhofar to protect that nation's sovereignty. Furthermore, Iran played a major stabilizing role in the complex conflict between Israel and Palestine, and Arabs in general. Today, we know, especially after Prince Reza Pahlavi's trip to Israel, that even Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi can, in a way, be considered the architect of the 1975 agreement and the Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt. Likewise, we saw that these relations were so good that among the countries that hosted the late Shah, one of them was Morocco, an Arab country, and ultimately it was Egypt that gave him refuge. Therefore, these things should be remembered, and our neighbors should know that the Iran of the future is an Iran that will extend a hand of friendship towards them. And the last point is that we shouldn't forget Israel is our strategic ally. Israel is a country with which we will have the most extensive relations in the future, but Arabs, the Arab countries, are our next-door neighbors, and by coordinating and cooperating with them, we can achieve the best results in friendly collaborations, both regional and super-regional, especially concerning oil, especially concerning the Persian Gulf and its role in the global economy. And this point is very, very important, that Prince Reza Pahlavi has extended a hand of friendship to these countries.
Well, we're gradually reaching the end of this 24 program, but before we say goodbye, I want to show you live images from Beirut, which is still witnessing Israeli bombings, and smoke from the air attacks on the Zahiyeh area in the southern suburb of this city has risen into the air again. These attacks resumed on Friday morning when the Israeli army announced that operations against what it described as Hezbollah infrastructure in Beirut's southern suburb had begun. Media reported that at least 6 times, just on Friday morning, the Zahiyeh area in Beirut's southern suburb was targeted. The Israeli army says that since the start of operations, it has carried out 26 waves of attacks against Hezbollah infrastructure so far. We'll end the program with these live images from southern Beirut.